Today we're taking a look at this video to see if we can learn something new about mixing vocals. And yes, we even have a goosebumps alert moment right in the middle of the video. Let's jump in.
This is how the biggest songs in the world fit the vocal and instrumental together like puzzle pieces. I've mixed hundreds of tracks this year, and I've used this technique in every single one. And I bet you'll start using it in every track too. With any mix, there's gonna be a huge problem. The left window is the frequency spectrum of the instrumental, and the right is of the vocals. At any moment in time, if we layer the vocal on top of the instrumental, you can see they're fighting for space. It's like if I play a note on a piano, then the same note with a bell, then play them together, then the bell sound gets kind of lost. That's exactly what's happening with the vocal and instrumental.
Okay, I see where he's going with this. The idea of two instruments playing the same note and one kind of overlapping the other, sure, that's going to happen. I'm worried that a beginner might watch this and think the takeaway is, okay, if one instrument plays a middle C, no other instruments are allowed to play that same note. And that, of course, is not the case. And I'm not saying that's what he's saying either, but the goal isn't to make sure nobody ever plays the same thing, but keeping in mind that when a bunch of instruments do occupy similar ranges of frequencies, at some point something's got to give. Otherwise, those frequencies typically down in the mid-range are going to build up and be the loudest thing in your mix. So then nothing sounds good, including the vocal.
And this fight for space, it's happening 44,000 times every second. That's why EQing the instrumental doesn't really solve the problem to make space for the vocals, because the frequencies are constantly changing. So here's the solution. Everything in this project that isn't a vocal, I have running into this instrumental bus.
I'm not sure why his point about 44,100 times a second, that's the sample rate of the music, or 48,000. I don't understand what that has to do with it, but let's see what he's got to say. Also, he's using Logic, in case anybody's wondering.
Now I'll find my lead vocal track.
I wanna love you in real time. All of these days passing us by.
I want the instrumental bus that I made to be able to hear that vocal. And I've already mixed this vocal, so I'll send it after all of the effects to a new bus. I'll put that in pre-fader mode and turn it to 0 decibels. That might look advanced, but all I've basically done is make a copy of the processed vocal.
I wanna love you in real time.
But I'm gonna
I see where this is going. So a pre-fader send means no matter what the volume of the vocal is doing, if you've got a bunch of volume automation, or if it gets turned all the way down or all the way up, the send is sending that vocal pre-fader before it gets messed with by the fader. So it's like sending a copy of this before it ever goes to the fader. And I'm guessing he's going to do some sort of sidechain.
change the output of this copy to no output. Now when I hit play, no sound comes out. The audio is going into that bus and then hitting a dead end. We're going to use that.
If you're a Studio One user, you don't have to do this because you can do the sidechain without having to create a bus that takes up space in your session. But, Logicer's gonna logic.
Ghost audio to affect the instrumental. So I'll go back to that instrumental bus and I'll add this plugin Soothe.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. We'll get back to it in just a moment. If you like what you see here, please be sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you're a home studio musician who's frustrated with the quality of your mixes, and you've got all this great music in you, but you can't seem to make your mixes sound like they do in your head, I can help. I've been a recording coach since 2009. After mixing hundreds of songs over the years, I developed a 5-step process that I use every time I mix. It's not a paint-by-numbers system. It's a mixing philosophy that ensures that you focus on the right things in the right order. One of the biggest mistakes people make in their mixes is focusing too much on the wrong things. Once you fix your focus, you fix your mixes. You can actually enjoy mixing again and be excited to share your music with your friends. If that sounds good to you, I'd love to give you a free copy of my 5-step mix guide. You can download it at 5stepmix.com. All right, back to the video.
I'm sure most of you guys know this plugin. It's like a dynamic EQ that reacts to the level of audio like this. but it can be much more precise. So I'm going to sidechain it to that vocal bus we set up before, which was bus 26. Then I'm going to adjust some of the settings here. Now the instrumental can listen to the vocals. I'll show you what I mean by clicking this delta button here.
I wanna love you in real time. All of these days passing us by.
That sounds so weird, but I wanted to show you that because we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to carve out that space from the instrumental.
I wanna love you in real time. All of these days passing us by.
So 44,000 times every second, this thing is changing the tone of the instrumental based on what the vocal is doing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, I've not used Soothe, but the way he explained it was it's a bit of a multi-band compressor or more like a dynamic EQ. So it's listening to the vocal and all of those frequencies that he isolated. When it hears those in the vocal, it's turning those down in the instrumental. If you listen actually to his example, if you listen carefully, you can hear it's, while I get that he's going after just the kind of the vocal frequencies in the middle, it looks like it's affecting almost all frequencies. So you can actually listen and hear the music pumping with the vocal. So almost just like he did a regular sidechain compression where the vocal is triggering the instrumental to turn down. It's almost the same thing to my ears. Go back and listen to it now. You'll hear when the vocalist sings, you'll hear the music go, it kind of just dips down just a little bit.
I wanna love you in real time. All of these days passing us by.
Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot like what would happen if you cranked the vocal in your mix and then had all of that hitting your mix bus compressor. That vocal being so loud would do essentially a similar thing where it's triggering the overall bus compression, which will turn the music down. An example of this is there was an album that Seal did in the 90s. And I've seen interviews with the engineer saying like the vocal was so loud that in the mixing and mastering phases, it was the main thing triggering everything else, and it acted almost like it was ducking the rest of the music whenever he sang. Interesting approach. I don't love it here because I almost feel like I'm hearing the music pumping under the vocal. I'd like it to be maybe less obvious, but maybe I was listening very closely to that because I'm paying attention to it. Would I have noticed it if he hadn't pointed it out? I don't know.
So 44,000 times every second, this thing is changing the tone of the instrumental based on what the vocal is doing.
Again, I don't know why the sample rate matters. It's only changing it when the vocal sings, not when it's not singing. So it's technically not doing it every 44,000 times a second.
Now, if we take a snapshot of the frequency spectrum, they're going to fit together more like puzzle pieces. But we want this effect to be a little more subtle. I like carving out around 2 or 3 decibels of space so it sounds more natural.
My man, he already was like it was too obvious before, so I spoke too soon. Let's see what he does.
Love you in real time. All of these days passing us by. Don't let me forget what it feels like to love you in real time.
Thanks for watching.
All right, I dig that a lot. So what I realized from watching that last, if you look at the screen capture here, you can see it's not doing just a certain set of frequencies and turning them all down. It's only where she's singing, only those specific frequencies get turned down. And when he went more subtle, I kind of got goosebumps right now. When it went more subtle, what you can see, let me mute the audio just to hit play so we can see it happening here. Also, look how happy he is. He's trying not to smile, but he's totally happy with what he did here because he should be. So you can see these, if I'm understanding correctly, these frequencies that are bumping down, that's all that's getting turned down in the instrumental track. So it's not all the frequencies in this range because that would be more like just straight up sidechain compression. It's more nuanced and more subtle. That's super interesting. I don't know if there's a way to do this without the Soothe plugin because otherwise you'd have to, I'm not sure exactly how it works. Sounds like it's adjusting all different frequencies all the time and adjusting the EQ based on what's being sung. That's really, really interesting. And I don't buy plugins almost ever. I've bought one plugin in the last decade. That intrigues me a lot because what's happening is as the vocal sings, those specific vocal frequencies, whatever they are being turned down just a little bit in the mix. And it's more subtle and nuanced than just a straight up either dynamic EQ that's being sidechained or sidechain compression because while it is only happening when the vocal sings, like on sidechaining, it's only doing those specific frequencies, so it's a lot more subtle. I think you could probably get most of this accomplished sidechaining with a dynamic EQ that's triggering just mainly the middle range frequencies, say 200 up to 1,000 maybe. I think that would work fine, because in this first example at the very beginning of this, when he played the two together, I thought the top end of the vocal was coming through just fine. I didn't have any problem hearing it, so I don't think those higher frequencies, it matters if you use those to trigger this kind of ducking thing that's happening.
All of these days passing us by.
You could say maybe the mid-range is getting a little clouded and covered up, but the upper frequencies seem just fine. So I think you could accomplish this with a multi-band compressor or some sort of dynamic EQ that's being triggered from the vocal. But it's a super interesting technique, and kudos to Big Z for showing it to us.
Thanks for watching. Peace.
Peace to you as well, Big Z. I just subscribed. If you're a Home Studio Corner subscriber and you haven't subscribed to Big Z, I'll link to it in the description. Go subscribe. Why? Because content creators who are teaching cool stuff, and then when they give examples of their work, it sounds fantastic, that's worth a follow, because that's not always the case. While the technique in this video was a little more advanced, if you want to see my simple technique for using tools like EQ and compression to get a pro-sounding vocal, be sure to check out this video. Thanks for watching. See ya.